Hello and welcome everyone. It's a great morning, raining outside, but we're here to actually talk about some good stuff. My name is Aaron Thompson. In case you don't know who I am, I'm the president of the Kentucky Council on Post-Secondary Education, and I want to welcome each of you here to the launching of this great event. Now, there's some things that we know. First of all, in order to have a strong economy, you're going to have a strong educated workforce. Direct correlation. You look at all the data, it tells you that. In order to have a strong educated workforce, you have to have a strong higher education system. In order to have a strong higher education system, you have to have students that get through the system with the kind of talent that employers want. They have to have both the quality and the ability and skills to perform at the levels that we need for them to perform. And so I'm very happy to be a part of this launch to tell you a little bit about how we're going to do that in Kentucky moving forward. Now, the Student Success Collaborative is really we're here at CPE and we're pushing this as a policy level, but we're also pushing it at a very practical, technical assistance level. We know that the rubber meets the road on our campuses. We know that they have done a really good job the last many years, but we know that we can do much better. So the goal of the Student Success Collaborative is to help colleges and universities develop innovative approaches to improve graduation rates, close equity gaps, and ultimately enhance our workforce. Now, I know these goals are a priority for each of you, and that's why you're here today. We all know that students fare at a high level when they have the kind of influences and the inputs that they need to get where they need to go. And we know that if that happens and they really get that college credential, not necessarily a four-year credential, but that college credential that allows them to participate in the workforce at a high level, they also add to our economy. The return on investment is great and their quality of life is much better. This collaborative has the potential to make Kentucky a national leader in developing strategies for student achievement because of our unique approach. This will serve as the first statewide center in the country. I will just say this, I'd love for Kentucky to be first as often as we can be, but it will serve as the first statewide center in the country that works with both 2- and 4-year institutions to connect them with the power that enacts change and makes them have exactly the kinds of wherewithal to do what they need to do at all levels of our educational system. Now, we're going to include business and community leaders. We're going to include policymakers, foundations, and other organizations. And we're going to work with a national network of institutions as well as thought leaders around the country to help us to do this probably better than we could have done it or think about doing it by ourselves. Now, leaving institutions to work in isolation is inefficient. It limits their success and it creates redundancies. This statewide network will ensure a range of voices that will be included in the conversation. And we know the best way for us to move the agenda forward in this state is to have a variety of people, business and industry, as well as higher education leaders around the table early to talk about how we can build the progress for Kentucky. Now, we've seen here in Kentucky that much can be done when campus level folk get involved with a variety of people that's out in the public. We see when they work with communities, not only just business and industry, when they work with families, when they work with other community leaders, the things that we can accomplish are unimaginable. And that's what this institute will be here to help them to do. However, enduring institutional-wide change creates the kind of outcomes that we need to see here in Kentucky. Now, people talk about the pandemic and what are we going to do innovatively when we come out of the pandemic? My argument is that we don't have to wait till we come out of the pandemic to know the data. We know that we need to create innovation now. And that's what this Student Success Collaborative will be doing. So everyone here today has a role to play in making sure that this happens, whether it's lending your expertise, resources, enacting policies, or working directly with students. We know that you have a part to play in this collaborative. Now, I can't thank enough James Graham Brown, and Mason, I know she's on here, you know, the idea of coming together, working together, and I appreciate the funding you provided us here, that allows us to see how we can increase the impact of our outcomes that we want to see, how we can increase students getting through the system faster and getting through with that quality credential that they can tell us that it was well worth being a part of the process. I'm also grateful to have the support of the governor, the lieutenant governor, and those who are focused on education, like Representative Tipton, Senator Wise, that knows that it's going to take a strong educational pipeline in order to get where we need to go. And this is pre-K all the way through higher ed. So I know the Lieutenant Governor is with us now, and I want to give her a chance to actually say a few words to us. Lieutenant Governor, good to see you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. It is an honor to be here with you and to celebrate Kentucky being first and being innovative when it comes to supporting our students through education. So many of you know that I am Lieutenant Governor, but I often consider myself Kentucky's highest elected educator. And so that makes me even more excited to be here to support this initiative. And so Dr. Thompson just mentioned COVID-19, and I can say that the pandemic certainly has brought us new challenges, and there are certainly challenges that are unique to the pandemic. But what it's also done is it has unearthed issues that have been lying just beneath the surface. If you are in education, if you follow education, this is nothing new to you, but perhaps it is something that has become it has made the general public aware now of the inequity within our education system. And so our job is to make sure that all Kentuckians have the tools that they need to succeed in today's economy, today's ever-evolving and changing economy. It is one of the most important things that we can do for the future of the state. Dr. Thompson mentioned that we've got to have our pipeline in line in order for us to have a really strong economy. I always like to say that the future of our economy is in our classrooms today. And what's tragic about that is that there are often so many gifted students in Kentucky who aren't able to share their talents with their communities and as participants in the workforce because of the systemic barriers that are in their way. We know, for example, that transitions are a big sticking point for students. I was a high school assistant principal before coming into this office, and so I always saw the transition from high school to higher education as a huge transition point for so many of our kids. We work so hard to get them to the graduation stage and hand them their diploma, and then so often we kind of put our hands up like we've succeeded rather than understanding that it's just simply a passing of the baton to the next phase. Also, when they enter the workforce, there are times that we really have to focus on removing all of these barriers. There are some that are large, there are some that are small, but every one of them could be the tipping point to students dropping out or choosing not to further their education at all. Now, the good news is that all of us here together are working to rebuild our systems in a way that works for every Kentucky kid. The state set a goal to increase the number of Kentuckians with degrees or post-secondary credentials to 60% by 2030. And closing the gap in graduation rates is going to be a big part of being able to reach those goals. And you know, I know Dr. Thompson is our resident data person, but those numbers aren't arbitrary. They're what we need to achieve to be closer to the projected national average and to remain competitive in an economy, especially here in Kentucky, that is absolutely on fire right now. Almost all of the jobs that have been created since the Great Recession require some sort of higher education. And every single Kentucky student should have the opportunity and the support they need to succeed if they choose to pursue a degree or credential. For too long, we have treated high school graduation as the finish line instead of what it truly is, which is the starting gate. And so I'm confident that we can change that And this collaborative is going to play an invaluable role in doing just that. So I want to say thank you again for having me, Dr. Thompson, and your team does such great work. It's been an honor to be able to work with you over the last couple of years. And I look forward to continuing this important work together. So it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce the governor. He was unable to join us in person today, but he does send his regards, and he does have a few important words to share with us. So I will kick it over to the governor.
I believe education is key to growing our economy, addressing inequities, and improving the quality of life for every Kentuckian. That's why I'm excited about the launch of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. We owe every Kentuckian access to a quality, affordable higher education. And our colleges and universities have done tremendous work to move us forward, but they can't do it alone. To get to the heart of the challenges our students face, we got to work together in meaningful ways and amplify each other's efforts. The Kentucky Student Success Collaborative will bring together educators, institutions, and businesses and government leaders to share resources and expertise on a scale our Commonwealth has never seen before. Together, we will create programs and resources to improve graduation rates, close equity gaps, and enhance workforce development. All this is great news for Kentucky as our economy is on fire with new economic development announcements we're making week after week. I'm grateful the James Graham Brown Foundation is helping to make this happen through their generous gift in support of this initiative. Thank you also to the Council on Post-Secondary Education for your continued dedication to our students. And thank you to everybody who will lend their time and energy to this effort. You're doing a great service for our team, Team Kentucky.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Max Wise, Kentucky State Senator for the 16th Senate District and also the chairman of the Senate Education Committee. It's an honor to be here with you this morning and with so many stakeholders that are invested in education success and education outcomes for all Kentuckians. I want to start by thanking Dr. Thompson for his leadership, as well as all of those at CPE for the work that they do in and outside of the hallways and the work for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Also want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for her comments this morning, her work on education previously in her previous role and then currently in her role as Lieutenant Governor, as well as the Governor for his remarks this morning. What an opportune time to work with our our 2-year and 4-year institutions as we make this collaborative agreement. I'm so excited to be a part of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. I think this is an opportune time for us as Kentuckians to come together and focus on both educational attainment, workforce goals, and as we set forth and make this a better Kentucky. I do also want to comment in terms of the 60 by 30 goal. I know the Lieutenant Governor commented on this. I think that is an exciting and attainable goal. I know there's been a lot of work put in by so many of our stakeholders. I'm excited to be a part of it and to see as we transition forward. I also want to thank the James Graham Brown Foundation for their work and their help in this. I think this is a wonderful tribute from them to help all Kentuckians. As someone who has been an educator in the college classroom and now in the graduate school classroom and a policymaker, I'm fully invested in the work that we're doing as Kentuckians. I saw for so many times first generational college students step on a college campus and trying to help them get through and find their way in the college setting and attain that goal and to get an exciting time to find a job and a place in the workforce. So I think this is a great success that we're a part of, and I look forward to many more opportunities that this may present. At this time, I want to recognize my friend and colleague, Representative James Tipton.
Thank you, Senator Wise. I appreciate your kind words, and it is certainly a pleasure to be here and to have an opportunity to share with the Student Success Collaborative. I serve on the House Education Committee, and for the past 5 years, I've also served as chairman of the Budget Review Subcommittee for post-secondary education. So post-secondary education is dear to my heart. One of the reasons I made the decision to run for elected office in the first place is as I wanted to provide a better future for my children and the children and students all across Kentucky. We have seen significant improvements In the last few years, the goal has been mentioned previously, the 60 by 2030. A lot of that is due to we're now on a performance-based funding model for our universities and public colleges, and this is really enhanced our achieving our goals. But we have so much work to do. President Thompson and I talk often. One of the things that I have shared with President Thompson is our education system is like a chain. And in that chain are different links. And when I talk about our education system, I'm talking P through 20. We have to think in those terms now because what happens to a student when they're in preschool, kindergarten, early years can have an impact on their success in the future. And if there is a weak link in that chain, it's going to have an impact on that student's success down the road. That's why we have to be focused on the complete education model. And I'm very excited to be part of this group working to help you and help students all across Kentucky achieve their goals and have an opportunity for success through their educational experience. At this time, I want to thank everybody for this. We're looking forward to helping our students be successful. And it's now my pleasure to introduce another partner in this, the president of the James Graham Brown Foundation, Mason Rummel, for a few words.
Thank you, Representative Tipton. I am Mason Rummel, President and CEO of the James Graham Brown Foundation. And in this role, I get to make a lot of comments and brief talks at events like this, but it's very important that you all know I don't do this alone. I have an amazing team here at the Brown Foundation, and Blake Pickett, who is on this call, is our senior program officer and has been working on this project for at least 2 years, maybe longer. And he deserves 99% of the credit for helping the Brown Foundation get on board and in touch with this work. So I do want to thank him publicly. We are really pleased to be part of this creative and thoughtful approach to improving the lives of Kentucky citizens through our higher education institutions. Our donor, Mr. Brown, was a great supporter of higher education, and over the years, our foundation has sought ways to improve our education institutions as one of the means to improve the image of Kentucky. And as a foundation representative who's been working on solutions for a variety of causes over the past several decades, I've learned one thing, and that is that little is accomplished in isolation. So grant-making foundations, for example, have learned that when they pull together and focus on a shared agenda and a common cause, the outcomes can be exponentially greater and far more effective. We seem to do better when we learn from each other, when we share our successes, our lessons learned, and our thought leadership. The same goes for the partners in this collaborative. It's our hope that each of the strengths and talents that these institutions bring to this effort will have a great impact on the students we serve and the outcome of our state's higher education sector. The Brown Foundation is truly grateful to each of you for your willingness to try something innovative and for being willing to step outside of your comfort zones to do something great for our state and our future leaders. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the staff of the Brown Foundation, I offer tremendous thanks for this and look forward to realizing the potential I know this collaboration will have. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Lily Massey-McKinley.
President Thompson, would you like to join in or jump in while Lily's working out her?
Absolutely. And I will start if Lily jumps in. Lily is,
There we go.
oh, there she is. Okay.
I'm so sorry, everyone. I just wanted to thank so much Mason and Blake for being here and for your tremendous support. I look forward to working with you as the collaborative gets underway. I'm Lily Massey-McKinley. I'm the Executive Director for the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative, and it is my honor to be able to introduce the Collaborative's Thought Leader Advisory Group, many of whom are able to join us today for our panel conversation. So to our advisory group, I'd like to thank you for your commitment to support our work here in Kentucky and lend your knowledge, experience, and network to helping us accelerate progress on student success. So our National Thought Leader Advisory Group includes Dr. Joe Cusio, Professor Emeritus of Psychology at Marymount California University and educational consultant. Dr. Donnie Fu Elston, Chief of Staff and Vice President of Strategy at Complete College America. Dr. Nick Hillman, Professor of Education and Director of the Student Success through Applied Research Lab at the University of Wisconsin. Dr. Deborah Humphreys, Vice President of Strategic Engagement with the Lumina Foundation. Dr. Allison Cadlick, Founding Partner at SOVA. Dr. Adriana Kazar, who cannot be with us today, but serves as Professor of Leadership and Director of the Pelias Center for Higher Education at the University of Southern California. Ms. Naima Mitchell, Director of Unit Strategy and Learning with Jobs for the Future, and Dr. Amelia Parnell, Vice President of Research and Policy at NASPA, the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on some of our most pressing challenges and promising opportunities in Kentucky. To our audience, you will have the opportunity to ask questions to the panel after their discussion with Dr. Thompson, so please put any questions that you have in the Q&A box. Now I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Thompson.
Thank you, Lily. And I have to tell you what a privilege it is to get to know Lily well. And Lily is our executive director of this collaborative. And Lily has an extensive background in student success, as well as overall higher education. And so Lily, great to have you on board. I look forward to working with you and your team, as I'm sure all these other folk will, and especially as panelists. Now, panelists, I'm going to call on you to answer several questions, and I'm sure our audience will have some for you. But I want you to think about these questions with two big items in mind, and that's quality and equity. Now, what we know is that we're here to increase the quantity of our credentials, but we're also wanting to make sure that each of our students have a quality education that employers and other folk can appreciate. And I would be remiss, and Mason, I appreciate you pointing it out. Black Pickett and myself, about 2.5 years ago, sat down over some Kentucky good stuff and talked a little bit about what it would mean to have this kind of collaborative and what it would mean to Kentucky. So Black, I want to appreciate you for this kind of collaboration with us here at CPE. So I'm going to call on Naima first for this question, and I hope you're ready for it. The work of the statewide Student Success Collaborative is based on the promise that we can accomplish more together than any institution can achieve on its own. So in your experience, why is it so important to have a backbone organization in the state to facilitate collaboration on student success issues?
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Good morning to everyone. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this advisory group. This is really important work and I'm excited to be involved in it. So I've had the pleasure of working with entities like the Student Success Collaborative across the country with other organizations like this for several years. And I've gotten to know a lot of those centers and their colleges to come to understand that there's a real value when there is a separate organization who is helping you get the work done. I recently heard Dr. Yolanda Watson-Spiva from CCA actually note that intermediaries should help those on the ground get their work done easier. Part of what a backbone organization can do is do a lot of the legwork. Everybody has a lot of busy day-to-day things that are happening at their colleges and their institutions. But an organization like the Student Success Collaborative can actually help them come together, take a break, identify what are some of the best practices that are happening across the state and even across the country, and give them the tools that they need to do exactly what you talked about, bringing equity and quality into the center of the work that they're doing at their colleges. I think that also backbone organizations make that distinction between just coordinating people, just bringing them together and fostering collaboration. And I think that the Student Success Collaborative is really going to be able to do that. And it'll be particularly important, I think, when you're thinking about 2 years and 4-year institutions. I know your lieutenant governor talked about the transition even from high school into post-secondary, and there's lots of opportunity for an entity like the Collaborative to make those transitions easier and to support, secondary into post-secondary institutions, and from 2 years into 4 years and even beyond into the workforce. So thank you.
Thank you. And you brought up a couple of points that I think is important. And I heard the Lieutenant Governor and Senator Wise mention that we didn't arbitrarily just set the 60% attainment goal for 2030. We know that we're predicting that if we get to that point by 2030, we can be in the middle of the pack of the country, having the kind of influence that creates a sustainable economy for Kentucky. The next question goes to my good friend, Joe Cuzio. Dr. Cuzio, you're on the West Coast, way out there, and I appreciate you getting up early. Now, I've known Joe several decades, and probably one of the greatest minds that I've experienced in student success. So, Joe, we're very happy that you're a part of our team here. So talk to me a little bit. You focused on student success from a student's standpoint for many years. Talk to us a little bit about what the Collaborative will have to do in their work to focus on creating a holistic and integrated approach toward this student success process.
First, thanks for the kind word, Aaron, and nice meeting everybody. I'm sorry it's a little impersonal at this point, but I hope we get to meet each other on a more individual level soon. The term holistic, I'd like to take a shot at defining that. We throw it around a lot. As I see it, a holistic there takes 3 shapes or form. It's manifested, first of all, in the development of the whole student. Aaron, you mentioned we want not only quantity, but quality. A high quality post-secondary experience would include not only the student's academic development, but the development of other aspects of the self, cognitive and non-cognitive factors would be involved, particularly, again, from an equity standpoint, but the research seems to suggest that those non-cognitive variables like self-efficacy, grit, growth mindset are as important as academic skill development. And also attention to psychosocial, affective dimensions of the self, always been important for student success, probably exacerbated by the COVID situation. So certainly a holistic approach that would involve collaboration between academic and student affairs, that sort of integration between these two divisions that historically, if I hear the word silos one more time, I'm going to get nauseous. It would be great if we can convert those silos into some synergy between academic and student affairs. Second form of holism, I would say, is the involvement of the whole educational system. I think James mentioned it's not even K-16, it's really P-20. I think Kentucky seems like it's in the vanguard on this. So collaboration across different segments or sectors, I think James called them links, certainly between schools and higher education and 2-year and 4-year colleges, as you mentioned earlier, Aaron. This is all stuff that you already know, but so holism in the respect of the whole system in addition to the whole student. And thirdly, I'm trying to make this as short and painless as possible, the whole college experience from entry to exit, first year through final year. Jacqueline mentioned, Lieutenant Governor, the importance of transitions. And I would argue that certainly the transition to higher ed, the transition through higher ed, and the transition from higher ed to what comes next. It would be great if we could have a holistic, integrated undergraduate experience with a meaningful beginning, middle, and end. Now, collaboration for that to happen, I would say, would need to be between faculty and staff that deal with primary lower division coursework, general education, first year experience, collaborating with faculty and staff involved with upper division coursework in the major, and tying together, I'd love to see tying together the first year experience with a final year experience, the keystone and the capstone. And four-year colleges, that would be a senior year experience. And two-year colleges, it might even be a second year experience. But the beginning and the end, linking those bookends. And part of that collaboration, of course, would involve collaboration between the colleges and employers and community members, which have been mentioned before. I'd love to see some reciprocity here between educators and career employers, where they would articulate to us the competencies they need. We help provide students with those competencies, and they help us by providing our students with experiential learning opportunities, internships, service learning, shadowing, nice reciprocity to facilitate the final year transition to the work world. And I don't know if this is beyond the scope of this initiative, but collaboration between undergraduate and graduate education, whether that be attention to involving students in undergraduate research that would prepare them for further education beyond undergraduate years. And I don't know if this would be part of the initiative, but preparation of university faculty to prepare them to come back to Kentucky undergraduate institutions, well prepared to teach, facilitate the learning process, promote academic advising, and how to facilitate equity and diversity, collaboration with our graduate students in the preparation of future faculty. I'd love to see that. That's a long-winded Pollyanna answer to a short phrase question. There's lots of dots to connect. As I see it, and I'm learning with you, I'm just sharing ideas, brainstorming. To me, I'd love to see the initiative or the center provide institutions with a compendium or menu of potentially effective practices that have been used elsewhere, or maybe have never been used before, that through the brainstorming of our group could be devised and supplied to universities, a menu that they can adapt to their particular circumstance. I'm convinced there are campuses that have the will to do more, but just don't know the way to do it. Maybe we can provide them with specific strategies or practices. And then lastly, I think there are some that may need incentives. They may not have the will. I'm really concerned about the default system in higher ed. Sometimes it's not conducive to the type of collaboration we like to see. I still see a lot of territoriality, competing for funds. I think the default system is not necessarily student success centered. I think there's still some prestige chasing. I'm not sure if this is true in the state of Kentucky, where prestige defined in terms of faculty advancement and advancement of the institution from presidential perspectives involve things that may not necessarily align with student-centered initiatives, particularly the success of first-generation underrepresented students. So maybe this is where policy comes in. How can we provide incentives for those who may lack the will heretofore to really engage in the practices that we know will make a difference for all students, but particularly for those students who are currently your first generation underrepresented students? Thanks for bearing with me on that long-winded answer, Aaron.
Thank you, Joseph. As you can tell, this man has a lot of wisdom. You just mentioned a couple of things that I want to verify to the audience that you're hitting the nail on the head. You talked about systems, systematic, the way we look at from the beginning to the end and how they tie together to create holism. Yes, we're going to be looking at that. The other item too is this collaborative will be concentrating on almost all of those things, if not all of those things you mentioned. That we're going to take best practice that are out there, but we're going to put it in a beta mode here for Kentucky to make it even a better practice. But we're hoping also to create new best practice. No, hoping we will create new best practice. And the knowledge of folk like you, Joe, will help us to do that. But you actually set up our next speaker really well. Donahue Elston, who's at Complete College America, and I've had a chance to work with for a long time. This comes to you, sir. You know, Kentucky is 48th in workforce participation in the nation. with now we have over 100,000 jobs open. What are tangible actions our higher education partners and employers can take to strengthen these connections, pathways, and on-ramps for Kentucky residents into a very strong, high-demand living wage opportunity?
Sure, I'd be happy to jump in. And first of all, I'd be remiss, Aaron, if I didn't just say congratulations to you and your team. I think it's a testament to your leadership as well as the legislators throughout the state to really tackle some of the most important issues that are taking place in higher education and for our communities. I just spent the past week in Kentucky with my children for fall break, and I'm a student success wonk. I mean, every time I'm somewhere, I'm engaging with people. I see young folks, returning adults, you know, who are involved in trying to get a certificate or a degree, and they're always telling me their stories, and it gives me the fuel that I think is really the foundation of the work that you're doing today. When I think about the report that's out there that was written by the Kentucky Chamber, it laid to bear one foundational problem. And it's not just a Kentucky problem, it's a national problem. We see this all over. Institutions of higher education have taken a lackadaisical approach to supporting the decision-making processes of programs of study and a connection between learning and career competencies and the transition to workforce, which ultimately leads to uneven completion rates, inequitable social mobility. The challenge for us impatient reformers is that the research and the ideas exist, but they're rarely implemented in a comprehensive way. And so when I think about that report, to me, you let the data drive the change. I mean, if every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets, then that means it's time for us to reimagine the system. And so to me, the collaborative is a bold solution to that core problem. You convene higher education and workforce sectors to implement comprehensive pathways that align with students' goals, integrate those career competencies, experiential activities, and transition them into the world of work or the direction that they want to go. And that can ultimately lead to more equitable economic recovery. I mean, when I think about how we have counted or quantified the value of college, yes, it's in degrees awarded, and the salaries earned and the workforce needs met, but it's so much more. The truest value of college is measured by lives changed. And in a society where your past often dictates your future, I think the collaborative is really honed in and locked in on the idea that colleges, universities should be places where anyone can learn what they need to get anywhere that they want to go in life. And Kentucky has been a member of the Complete College America Alliance since 2011. Aaron, you've been saying this over and over again that, you know, pathways were missing a core component, and that's the why, the sense of purpose. And so, you know, Complete College America looks forward to partnering with the collaborative on kind of implementing purpose-driven strategies that help students move away from those uninformed decisions that ultimately lead to underemployment and poor completion rates. And we know that those, when you talk about equity, we know that those challenges are most impactful and challenging for minoritized students, whether that's Black and brown students, poor students, rural students. They're the individuals that need these processes and structures most. So I think the big takeaway from that report and where the collaborative is going is that we move from talking about outcomes to what outputs get us to the outcomes. So we've got to think about structurally, what do institutions look like? What do our advising and onboarding processes look like? How do you connect with employer engagement? How do you connect those competencies to programs of study? And ultimately, how do you lock it in with policy? That's what's exciting to me about this work. And I know that, you know, we will be successful. You will be successful in this, and it's going to change the communities of Kentucky.
Thank you, Donnie Pooh. I will tell you that we've worked with Complete College America, as he said, since 2011. We've implemented a lot of those items that you pushed. As you know, several years ago, we went to, when I took over this position, like our co-requisite model, we just basically said we would no longer have developmental education for no credit hours, and that we would give them the wraparound services in those college credit courses. And guess what? Our success rate went through the roof. So I appreciate all that you all are doing. And just to let you know, Complete College America, with a little assistance from Lumina, will be working with the Student Success Collaborative around this purpose first advising. And you all need to stay tuned out there. We're going to be doing some things with our advising systems that are unique, Joe Cuzio holistic, and really create that process of looking and having the career in mind as we do the advising from the beginning. Next question goes to our friend Nick Hillman. Nick, you know, we knew even before the pandemic that issues of mental health were increasing so fast it was kind of hard for us to measure. Now, of course, the pandemic has brought this on even more. So as we spotlight this issue that we need to think about, and think about the basic needs of student success as we go through this, what are some of the best practices you've seen on college campuses to provide proactive, holistic student support, not only in the issues around mental health, but any of the others you want to talk about?
Thank you, Dr. Thompson, for the question, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this group. I'm really looking forward to all that we have ahead. There are serious strains on our mental health system, on our public health system, but especially on college campuses, our mental health of our student body. Students feel isolated in ways maybe they've always felt, and it's even more so these days, or in new ways that they've never felt before. And both of those experiences are creating uncertainties. They're creating stress, creating just challenges that can get in the way of their academic success. And so mental health in a number of ways, not just the isolation, but also just the uncertainty of our world right now are serious. And it's not an area of higher education that we always think about. When we think about student success, sometimes we jump immediately to emergency aid, and that's also important, extremely important. And so we have a confluence of challenges, wicked problems that are deeply, deeply human problems. And so it's just part of being human. So we can't, I think when we approach the mental health challenges in higher education, and we approach also the financial challenges that students are facing, they have emergency aid needs. They might be in economic uncertainty with their rent. They might be behind. They might not have food. They might be food insecure. There could be a number of issues related to childcare. Combining these two forces, the mental health and the emergency aid or the economic well-being of students, creates just deeply challenging problems. And so I say this because some of the solutions I think have to be really human-centered, and technology can get us partway there, but ultimately it's going to be people working with people that are going to make the kind of difference that we want to see. And for better or worse, the people working in higher education are either creating administrative burdens for students, paperwork, red tape, steps along the way that maybe can discourage participation in the benefits that are needed. And so I have some guiding principles briefly that I've seen around the country that I think are good, promising practices. One related to professionals who are trying to remove administrative burdens so that students can easily go through the mental health services provided or the financial aid that's provided by campuses to help students be whole. That's one. Connected very closely to that is being very student-centered. The group has already discussed this extensively, but being proactive and student-centered is key. Being able to be smart about how to do outreach, be tapped into networks that already exist to really amplify the momentum that maybe already is there, as opposed to sometimes building something new. Certainly building something new is also often needed. Third would be to really put equity first. Again, that's a theme of the group. So by asking questions about who's benefiting from these services, who's involved in the decision-making around services, who's being left out, who's burdened by them. Those are the kind of equity questions I've seen really promising practices built around when thinking about who's participating or benefiting from the mental health services or left out. And finally, all this kind of wraps together with building capacity, whether that's technical support, whether that's experts sharing ideas across campuses or within their own campus, as Dr. Cusio was describing, but across the board, removing administrative barriers and burdens, being student-centered and proactive, putting equity first, and then really focusing on the capacity are things that I think have great promise in addressing the deeply human challenges that exist right now with student success between mental health and financial well-being.
You know, you lend yourself to this question. I'll wait to ask in the question and answer period. But what I know after being in higher education for 3 decades plus, there are a lot of policies and administrative stuff that's been there forever that may have made sense maybe one of those days. No one remembers, but they're still in place. And so I'll just ask you, you're really calling us out and saying that we need to look at any of those barriers. And I will say that Representative Tipton is still in line, has asked us to look at this from higher ed. What are those administrative items that we need to be getting rid of that's just cutting down on the ability for us to do what we purport that we're there to do? So my question to you is, when you've looked at institutions around the country with this kind of milieu of administrative policies and processes and procedures that's been there for a long time, how willing have they been to get rid of them when they've been pointed out?
It all depends. Sometimes it's a matter of these windows of opportunity, and we have one now of, we could prioritize some sort of change around these windows of opportunity of how colleges have the HERF funds. They have the Higher Education Emergency Relief Funds that might be running out. So they might have to rethink some practices as a cost-saving measure. But one big one is administrative holds on students' accounts. And I can talk about it more, but I think campuses, they know they're stretched thin and they know they have to focus where they can. And so that could be a motivation to help revisit some of these ideas.
Thank you, sir. Now I'm getting ready to introduce a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time, and her commitment to student success. I mean, if you look at AAC&U, now at Lumina, and a variety of other places that she served as advisors and consultants, as well as being in the role as an employee to those institutions and nonprofits. This is someone who understands exactly what we're trying to do in Kentucky. Deborah Humphreys, I will tell you, Lumina has supported us in doing so many of these items that have shown great success. So I just want to thank you for the support over the years for Kentucky and our overall CPE and what we're doing in higher ed in Kentucky. So my question goes to you. We know the Lumina Foundation recently supported CPE to investigate academic programs in Kentucky that were most successful at eliminating equity gaps and career outcomes for graduates. Several programs in Kentucky are leading the way in this work, and which is the goal for all of our academic programs, I should say. So what are the essential building blocks of equitable education that lead to a strong career outcome for all students?
Thank you so much, Aaron. And I also want to add my word of congratulations on getting this initiative off the ground. I know that it's going to be really valuable to all of the institutions and students in Kentucky. And it's a terrific next step building on the incredible progress that Kentucky has already made. I know that Lumina has been really, really proud to support multiple initiatives in Kentucky related to equity. And as Aaron said, how do we assure that all of the credentials we're providing are high quality, by which we mean they're really leading to real opportunity, which is what that study really looked at very closely and with a lot of attention to differential outcomes for different students. So we've been really proud to be part of this, and I'm really honored to be part of this group. I've learned so much from Aaron and his team, and I know I'm going to learn some more. I think there are, as I thought about this question and the question of sort of essential ingredients to advancing more equitable access to quality credentials, I think there are sort of 5 things that I thought about. And you've already started a lot of these things, so it's really a question of, I guess, bringing them to scale and helping all of the institutions implement them with fidelity. So the first is data. That report you did obviously dug really deeply into the data about student outcomes. We really need excellent data on who our students are and what they need in order to provide the kinds of supports that Joe and Nick talked about. I would say also, though, in the data realm, where we really need focus is helping educators in our institutions actually use the data. We have a lot more data now about who our students are, how they're doing, what their experiences are, and how our graduates are doing. But we haven't really figured out how to have an efficient way to take that data, push it back down into institutions so institutions can learn from the data and continue to improve. So number one, data. Number two, your lieutenant governor rightly pointed out that you're in the middle of a sort of hot economy right now, but it's a very dynamic economy. And one of the things that I think is essential is building systems that allow educators to be aware of the changing nature of work and the changing needs that employers have, because it's changing much more rapidly than it might have in the past. And we at Lumina Foundation have been focused on how education can build among students really high capacity to do the things that machines cannot do. Basically what we call human skills. What are those human skills in today's workplace? So data, the changing nature of work, number two. Number three has already been mentioned, this question of sort of comprehensive and integrated student support systems. We have lots of ways in which we can support students, but unfortunately students don't always know how to find what it is they need at the moment that they need it. And so there's lots of really exciting work that we're supporting around the country on how you can integrate your student support systems and help students access them when they need them in a kind of comprehensive way, like Joe talked about, in terms of a holistic approach to student supports. Four has already been mentioned, this question of better and more proactive advising, helping students make good decisions all the way along their educational pathways, helping them get on a pathway, stay on a pathway, and really navigate our institutions. The more we dig into issues, like Nick mentioned, the hold policies, we have a couple of big projects going on around that. We use that policy of putting people in this status of hold, like you can't register for classes, for a ton of bureaucratic reasons. And half the time, one side of the campus is putting a hold on for one reason, other side doing the same thing for a completely different reason. And students have no idea what the system is supposed to be and how they're supposed to navigate it. So advising will be key. And then the final thing that I think you are already doing a lot of really innovative work here, but we still need much more of it. And that is more faculty engagement and professional development to help them know about the latest research on what is high impact learning. How do we really embed in every single program culturally sustaining teaching and learning practices that will really work for who today's students are? You've written on this, many have written on it. We have lots of data about how to do our teaching and learning practices really well, but we don't give faculty enough time and expertise and advice and professional development to enable them to use what we know and to put it into their programs in the specific ways that they need to, given their field of expertise and the level at which they're teaching. Joe mentioned this question of introductory, middle, and there's a progression to learning. And for us to have really high quality credentials, we have to be sure that each piece is building on the next. And that requires faculty collaboration as well as collaboration with the other elements of the institution. So those are the 5 things I think are most important. And all of them are absolutely key to closing equity gaps, because students of color, first generation students, rural students who don't know the hidden rules we have. You mentioned the bureaucracy. There's also all kinds of assumptions we make about how to navigate your way through. And many students just don't know what those hidden rules are. We have to make them much clearer.
Thank you, Deborah. First of all, I appreciate your wisdom, and I also appreciate Lumina, you and others at Lumina, helping us to think about this attainment agenda. And that was crucial as I started my career as president here, and even when I was executive VP, to focus on that North Star and being able to have the kind of assistance and support that Lumina and you and others have provided us with, I just want to say thank you. The last question goes to Allison Cadillac, who's the head of SOVA. And let me just first of all say that SOVA has been a technical partner with us in the past and will continue to be. So I'm glad you're here, Allison. I want to set this question up. First of all, I want to thank our campuses, our 4-year, 2-year public-private campuses. We have done a lot to focus on this. So anything we're talking about now, I just want everybody to know this is not taken away from the work that has been done, which has been tremendous. And so I want to thank them, openly and publicly for the work that they've done. They've been focused on the right things. They've been focused on making sure that they provide scholarships in many cases for all of our students. They've been focused on those student success items. And so all of that is in place and the mentality is there. Now we know that our job is to help them to go even farther. And that's what this is all about. So my question goes to you in this way. As we know, they've been tirelessly working to increase completion. By the way, Kentucky has. I would love for you to look at that and how far we've come in closing gaps, still a ways to go, but what we've done. But as they've been focusing on completion and closing equity gaps, implementing, proving, and promising student success initiatives all over the place, once again, public and private, 2- and 4-year. My question to you then is, what are the essential ingredients for even more of a positive change on our college campuses as we take this to the next level?
Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. And I want to absolutely echo your congratulations to your campuses, the hard work that they have put in and the commitment that they have shown all along in the sort of student success movement is why the collaborative, I think, is why you're ready for such an entity. And so I just want to echo the incredibly hard work that your campuses and your faculty, staff, and administrators at every level are putting in. And this is one of the things that we do focus on a great deal at SOVA is what does it mean to build capacity for middle out, bottom up, top down coordinated leadership for change. And so, you mentioned all of the student success initiatives that your colleges and universities have been engaged in. And, we hear an awful lot, and I think we hear this, in lots of different places and ways about initiative fatigue, right? The feeling of lots of different initiatives coming at people. And it's our experience that initiative fatigue is often less about the numbers of initiatives, the numbers of things that are happening, and the experience of those as being disparate or disconnected rather than part of a coherent vision for equitable student success. And so Dr. Cusio noted earlier, the importance of an integrated approach that creates synergy between academic and student affairs in service of a holistic view of students and systems. And I think that sort of systems focus is essential here. And that kind of whack-a-mole feeling that can sap energy, erode morale, chip away at people's sense of efficacy. I think the collaborative can really play a critical role in helping institutions and leaders at multiple levels sort of build their capacity not only to understand the relationship and interdependence of the most important and necessary reform efforts that are underway, because it's long-term work, right? This is not short-term work. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And it can also, the collaborative can play a critical role in helping to bolster that sense of shared purpose that keeps people focused and moving during tough times. A sense of purpose is as important for faculty, staff, and administrators as it is for students. And so it's one of the things that I think is most exciting about the potential of the collaborative. So creating the right experiences for leaders at different levels by doing things like supporting role-alike learning and collaboration across institutional boundaries, things that are very difficult to do if you don't have something like a collaborative in place, bringing together CAOs or CIOs. We talk about academic affairs and student services, those back office systems and processes that are the foundation of institutions also have to be at the table. And we know how easy it is for chief information officers or others who are in those systems and processes, from the registrar to all of these financial aid, right? They can be disconnected from these conversations. And so
helping to create the conditions and the connections for people to work across institutional boundaries that are sharing the same kinds of challenges. So important. Peer learning as a vehicle for building that sense of shared purpose and capacity. It's also absolutely essential for diverse stakeholders across institutions to be brought together. You know, part of battling the experience of initiative fatigue for institutions is helping people see not only how their own work contributes to the big picture, right? The big goal, but also how their colleagues' work relates, how others' work relates. And so, you know, a lot of the focus, I think, should be and needs to be not only on senior level leaders, but also those critical mid-level leaders, which I think of as anybody between the provost and frontline faculty and staff. They are critical change agents who shape the pace and quality of implementation of evidence-based priorities. And they are in unbelievably difficult positions, unprecedentedly difficult positions. They are often tasked with leading change up, down, and across without actually the formal authority to require change. So they, you know, so the skills, modern leadership skills required for mid-level leaders at multiple levels are more about sort of those adaptive and transformational things, relationship building, trust building, community organizing, interest negotiation, effective data use, silo spanning. All of these things are extremely difficult and extremely important components of the work, and they really do shape the pace and quality of the work and the outcomes for your students. And so, you know, I appreciate Dr. Humphreys talking about faculty engagement and the importance of that. I want to, you know, double click on that and also say just mid-level leaders at multiple levels within institutions and across your system need the kind of support that the collaborative can provide, and it can really play an indispensable role in supporting the capacity of these vital leaders who have some of the hardest jobs on campus. And so very excited to see this work kicked off. And also I really want to echo the congratulations to all of you, Dr. Thompson, to the leaders that spoke at the outset here. This shared commitment, which mirrors and echoes the shared commitment that your institutions have shown to large-scale student success work, is profound and profoundly important. And so I was grateful to be a part of it.
Thank you, Allison. And I have to tell you, I appreciate SOVA's partnership with us through this process also. Now, folks, you get a good example why we have such this group as a part of our advisory group. The knowledge that they're bringing to the table, I won't mention the years, Joe, but the knowledge and also the commitment to what we're trying to do here in Kentucky is really important. Now, I'm going to become a part of the panel, if you will, and I'm going to turn it over now to Lily to take us from here. Lily, tell us about what we need to be ready for. I know we got some questions that folk are asking us, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Thompson. Wow, thank you so much, everybody, for a wonderful, like, such insight that you've been able to share this morning on a broad range of topics that, as we've been having some early conversations with our campus partners, you know, these are some of the issues that they're bringing up and some of the questions that they have. So thank you for sharing your thoughts there. There are several questions for everyone, and so I'm going to kind of throw them out there, and if you'd like to answer it, please jump right in. And we have about 15 minutes left for this Q&A portion, and then any other questions that we may not get to, I'll make sure that I answer via message or email. So one question comes from Dr. O.J. Aleka, who is our president of IQ, our private university consortium. And his question is, success is in the name of this initiative. How will we measure success in the collaborative, and when will we know what that success is?
Well, I'll start out by saying, since I guess that's one of my main goals, to make sure that it happens, I think it comes in a variety of forms. It's not a summative. Yes, we're going to look and see how gaps are closing. We're going to look to see how the completion rate's going. We're going to listen to employers and alumni tell us about whether or not our campuses are doing what they need to do in order to make students feel as if they had a quality education. True enough. So we know the rubber meets the road at the campus level. And so much of what we're going to be doing will be with our partners on campuses, and OJ, your campuses also. You know, how well are they telling us that we're giving them the technical assistance that they need to move the agenda? How well are we informing them about best practice, best knowledge? How well are we interacting with them in professional development? How well are we doing all those things? All of those elements become a part of the assessment criteria that we're going to use to create continuous improvement. The big item, though, is that are we getting more of our Kentucky students through the pipeline, get more in the pipeline, through the pipeline, into a sustainable workforce that helps our economy get from the place where we're at, you know, in our poverty numbers. I mean, all of those are big items that we may not have a direct correlation to judge what we've done, but this is what good policy, good process, good practice will do. It will sort of inspire the process in a way that we can see actions happening. So there's a lot more to your, I mean, there's a lot more answers to your question that I won't dominate with, but those are some of the ways we're going to be looking at this.
Joe? Just unmute first.
Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry. Aaron, so the measures of the outcome of the successful collaboration would be both qualitative and quantitative, as you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I also jump in? I'd love to share that I think that in speaking to like the qualitative parts of it, I think you'll also start to hear from the institutions about how they feel like they're part of something that they, you know, in an opportunity to communicate with other institutions across the state that they may not have been able to do before. Right. And I recognize that that's a little squishier, that sometimes that's part of sort of the qualitative feedback that you hear, but it can be really important. Like when you're bringing them together, involved in any kind of institutes or workshops, their feedback on what they feel like they're walking away with is really important. And so it will be very important for the collaborative to take sort of regular pulse checks about, do they feel like their involvement in the collaborative is helping them move their work forward? And it's not something that's going to happen in like 1 year or 2 years. I think oftentimes there are these sort of big initiatives that happen, and oftentimes people want to say, okay, well, like, what have we accomplished? I do recommend patience and understanding that some of this change is going to be incremental. And that, you know, recognizing that there's going to be student outcomes, that you hope to see changes, you know, as Dr. Thompson just mentioned, but also it's about how leaders and faculty at these institutions feel like they are better able to serve their students based on their involvement in the work of the collaborative.
Naeem, if I add to that, this sense of team, sense of mutual respect for what different constituencies do. That qualitative assessment, I would just like to reinforce. Sharing a quick personal experience, I've always insisted that our first year experience instructors were a team of student affairs professionals and faculty, and serendipitously one outcome of that collaboration was greater respect for each other's work. Faculty really got an understanding. These student affairs people know students. They know student development. And the student development people, when they were in the classroom teaching the course, suddenly had more respect for the challenges that faculty instructors have about students completing their assignments. That was a serendipitous qualitative outcome that I still treasure retrospectively as a result of that collaboration. I hope maybe some of our measures could pick that up as well, as Naeem is suggesting.
Thank you, everyone. We have another question from Dr. Valerie Wheat. Joe touched on this when he talked about a menu of best practices for colleges to choose to implement, but I'm curious what the mechanism will be for how this backbone organization can support work happening in individual classrooms to support student success. And this can go out to anyone.
Lily, who asked that question again? I didn't hear you. I'm so sorry.
Dr. Valerie Wheat.
Well, I
Well,
do, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dr.
No, no,
Thompson.
I didn't want, yeah, you go ahead, Allison.
Well, I was just going to say, so there are lots of different ways that this can happen. One of the things that we see that's really effective that I hope and the collaborative is ideally positioned to make happen is when we talk about classroom practices and learning, nothing is as powerful as faculty talking to faculty. Now, it's really, really important to understand best practices from elsewhere, and there needs to be a good balance of what are the most promising practices. And there is a huge amount of literature and research around high impact practices in teaching and learning, around culturally responsive and relevant teaching, around all of the things that we need to do, but nothing speaks to, and I'm saying this as a former and probably future faculty member, nothing speaks to faculty like other faculty. And so creating the conditions for faculty to learn from each other, from their practices, to build their sense of efficacy and capacity, because it's extremely challenging for faculty everywhere to kind of make those, there's some sort of fundamental mindset shifts that are entailed in large scale equity grounded student success work. And faculty need support to make those shifts because a lot of the things that our disciplines taught us or promised us or told us our job was about actually can't be made good on except at the expense of students. And so trying to find ways to create the conditions for faculty to bring their passion and their commitment and their talent and their sort of, real sort of identity-based drive around their disciplines to learn about new ways of inspiring new kinds of students, right? Because we have evolving student needs and students are more complex than they've ever been. And so sort of helping faculty members sort of connect the dots between their passion and the sort of evidence around high impact practices is really important. And that needs to be faculty led, faculty driven. And so things like teaching and learning academies that bring together faculty to share what they're doing, what's working, what they're learning, to troubleshoot together, those kinds of things are really important. So I would just stress the importance of peer learning and support for that.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't say that none of this can happen without faculty. And I'm putting my faculty hat on and my CPE president's hat on. Faculty engagement with students in and out of the classroom, the most pure way of thinking about how do we get the impact that we're trying to measure here with this collaborative. To do, and I have to tell you, CPE, we've always involved faculty in all that we can do, just simply because sometimes they get left out of the conversation and they're key to the conversation. I do want to say that. The second thing I will say though, we need to use our data and analytics to help faculty and understand the lay of the land too. This is something we haven't done very well, I think. They need to have, these are smart people, by the way. Our education is full of smart people. How do we use those talents that we have? And you'll see this in our next agenda where we talk about that. How do we use the talents of our faculty and staff to help us to actually solve the big problems, to move this big agenda? And I think it's crucial that we also say that there's a lot of groups that represent faculty, that interact with faculty, that we have to make very much key partners as we do this. But to me, it's really a way of thinking. By the way, faculty are in the lifelong learning, believe me, right? So how do we use that as a base, that core value that they have, we have, to do those items that we're talking about?
And just a quick, not that I want to have the last word, God forbid, but I certainly agree with Allison that faculty collaborating with faculty is the best professional development, and the classroom is central. I mean, faculty have more regular contact with students than anyone else. I would just like to add, part of the value of faculty is helping each other and increasing their willingness to collaborate with student services, the art and science of referral, the mentoring beyond just academic development, are little subtle ways that I think we can help faculty help other faculty, but also help faculty connect students with the array of campus support services that they may underutilize, that faculty may be uniquely positioned to encourage student use and facilitate their use. Again, I would argue that the art and science of faculty referral, knowledge of campus resources, all that could be started in the classroom and then branch out to form better collaboration with our support services. Good question, though.
Joe,
Yeah.
Lily?
Joe,
Oh.
you said, no, I'm sorry. No, go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say on this question of how you help faculty build their capacity, Kentucky's in a really good position because it's already started some of this. So Aaron and his team for a number of years have had faculty groups that get together either around disciplinary organization, how can we do better in our discipline, or to tackle specific challenges, the remediation issue and developmental education. So you're building on something that Kentucky's already has some practice in, and it's really just a matter of sustaining that work and bringing more faculty in over time. Kentucky has also put together these faculty fellows around employment issues. Faculty traditionally have not been asked to think about so much what happens to students when they leave and how exactly they should be aligning their curriculum to the changing nature of work. And so, but they're not interested in it. They just don't know how to do it. Right. So I just wanted to be sure that people know that the ground has already been tilled in ways that are going to really help to make this a success.
Thank you. I'm just going to add one other piece to this because I think it's important that we all agree that there needs to be a diverse team of individuals, but I'd like us to think beyond the individual roles of the stakeholders and start thinking about the critical journey of the student experience. Because when you realize that, there are corresponding strategies that might require student affairs practitioners, advisors, faculty members, but ultimately it's a larger integrated framework around how do you help students identify a sense of purpose? How do you build a structure for that to happen? How do you make sure it happens fast with momentum? And then how do you provide support? And that will look different at different types of institutions and across different stakeholder roles, as long as everyone sees that as the North Star for their larger goal.
Yeah.
I just want to say one other thing. So Joe, maybe I'm the last word, I don't know, but I mean, Donnie Fu makes a point that I think is crucial. And as a faculty member, I will tell you, I knew a long time ago, I had to move from teaching to learning. And if you look at where a student is coming from a learning paradigm, social, emotional, cultural, academic, then it looks different. As we interact, as we build what we need to build, and Deborah, I appreciate you mentioned these collaborative, that's the role we say. Here is a student learning issue. How then do we use what we need to do to be able to look at that student as an individual, as a holistic individual, Joe, and be able to build that student where she or he can be where they need to be in order to actually have skin in the game. And so I think I appreciate that last statement. I think we would be remiss if we didn't say we do need to work harder from moving from a teaching paradigm to a learner's paradigm. From thinking about just the jobs that we do with the descriptions to think about what do we do in service to the student, him or herself.
Thank you, everyone. That was such a great question. There are several more that are coming in, and I know we only have about 10 more minutes. So if we can get through, we'll get through as many as possible. One question comes from Stephanie Devine, and she asks, I'd love to hear more about your thinking about engaging industry leaders and economic developers as a part of this process regarding your well-made point about preparing students for high-wage jobs.
Well, I mean, that's a part of our priorities here at CPE. Hate to be answering all the questions here, but it's important that we look at employers as partners now versus us preparing students for employers, hopefully at career centers to come in and get it. This purpose first advising is one way of thinking about this. What we're doing with looking at building those employability outcomes for students in our programs is another. Employers have to be on the front end of this conversation, working with our faculty to design programs for 10 years from now, not for those that were needed 10 years ago. And so we have a part of what we're doing in that. As a matter of fact, at CPE, redesigned CPE to have that piece now as a part of our structure to do that. I would love to see by the time 2030 happens, that either in high school or college, that every student has a workplace learning opportunity and taking full advantage of it. I keep on going with this forever, but we have purposefully designed strategically to put this as a part of the process and not on the back end. Faculty are needing to be with employers as this conversation takes place, not just in an advisory group that once every 3 months they come in for a chicken dinner, but as an advisory group who they can actually have interaction with in a formative, ongoing way to develop what they need to develop. And this is not just for our 2-year institutions, folks. This is for our 4-year institutions also, because we are all preparing students for the workforce. And so how we get employers engaged with us and how they get us to engage with them becomes a whole new way of thinking about how we're doing business. So we have a whole design for that. Would love to share, Stephanie, with you. Rick Smith is the person in charge of this. Love for you to talk with him. But yes, this is a part of our design.
And Joe said this earlier. He's like, I get tired of hearing, you know, this idea of isolation and different, you know, communities. I think there is a clear disconnect. As a campus practitioner, there are a lot of institutions that understand the need to ensure that their students are prepared for workforce outcomes. And then there's a lack of there's a huge disconnect between when that ever takes place at an institutional level. And I think that there's so many different components of the student experience where we have to fix that structure, from choosing majors on the front end to even sharing with these first generation students, these students that tend to be the least served. What can they do with this particular major that they choose? What's the highest demand for the fields for a particular region or for a particular state? And then you've got to weave that all into the academic experience. It has to be aligned in your academic calendars and in your academic pathways. And so all those things tie in together and bring in a lot of different stakeholders to make that happen.
Aaron, can I ask, I know we had other questions, very quick. You said this cannot be sporadic. Can you give me an example of how Kentucky has managed to engineer sustained dialogue between employers and faculty and other representatives on campus?
There's several things, and I won't take up all the time by doing it, but even the way we built this education continuum from early childhood to employers, looking at, you know, I call it pathways, potholes, process, and pipelines, looking at the potholes along the way that helps a student, that when we lose students, how we can help them to build themselves toward the end. We're wanting to get employers, Joe, and we're working with the Education Workforce Cabinet to get employers to go in and talk to our young folk and getting them to design early. We're using our dual credit processes that Representative Tipton and Senator Wise can talk about. But we've also worked with Lumina, thank you, Lumina, and QA Commons to have our employers work with our programs, faculty, to design employability skills, we used to call soft skills, right, and to the program, not just that they take a test in the end and say, hey, now we're soft skills efficient. But the idea that these are only several examples that we're talking about. We're also building what I consider to be a process of ongoing dialogue with our Kentucky Workforce Investment Board, our Chamber Business Education Roundtable. I can keep on going. All of these, if we get everybody involved from their end to bring everybody around the table to talk about the same issues, then what we have is a way to actually get the inputs that create holistically, I keep using that word, the kind of outcome that we're really trying to design strategically.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for your thoughts today. I wish we had another hour with you all. This has been so incredible, and there's been a lot of engagement from those who are watching in too. So just really, really exciting. I'm personally so excited for the official launch of the collaborative and to get started. So maybe we can switch back. I've got a few slides that I want to talk through, just 5 more minutes on where we are and what's coming next. So as we wrap up, I'm excited to tell you a little bit about our team with the collaborative, our theory of change, and our scope of work. I am thrilled to work alongside such amazing colleagues, including Beth Ann Pennington, who most recently served as the Dean of Retention Services at Hazard Community and Technical College, and also Phyllis Clark, who most recently served as the Vice President of Student Affairs at Simmons College of Kentucky, and before that served at the University of Louisville in the Cultural Center. I was most recently with Bellarmine University as the AVP of Career Development and Strategic Partnerships, and before that worked with 55,000 Degrees, a collaborative action initiative in Louisville. We hope that our diverse experience and skill sets will allow the collaborative to fully engage with and support our campus partners across Kentucky. Our theory of change is rooted in campus and student voice. By listening to the priorities and concerns of our campus partners, we will work to develop resources and communities of practice that build our collective knowledge and capacity for implementing best practices in student success. We recognize how hard campus partners are working to ensure equitable success for all students. We see our role as conveners of community, facilitators of learning, and backbone support for project implementation. Your priorities drive our priorities. So to get started, we would love to visit your campus and talk with your team about effective innovations that you've got going on, as well as persistent challenges that you and your students may be facing. We're reaching out through the provost to schedule these visits now. As I said, campus voice drives our agenda, and we look forward to visiting with you soon. In several conversations that we've begun with campus partners, supporting student basic needs has been a common theme. So we've decided to launch our initial community of practice around this topic sometime before the end of the fall semester, and we welcome representatives from all campuses to join us. More information will be shared through the collaborative's newsletter that you can sign up for on our website. We are thrilled to be working with Jobs for the Future and Complete College America to offer free technical assistance on a variety of student success issues to our campuses. More information about these opportunities are available on our website, and the deadline for campuses to request technical assistance is this Friday, October 29th. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to have a conversation. Other resources and professional development programs coming in the spring include an online resource and knowledge hub that will really connect all of our faculty and practitioners across the state in meaningful dialogue, as well as easy access to resources on best practices, new reports that may be coming out, exciting data or interesting data, and other just support resources for our campuses, as well as the annual CPE Student Success Summit, which typically takes place in April. And we are also working to develop a new Kentucky Change Leadership Institute designed for our mid-level campus leaders who are both boots on the ground and leaders of campus-wide initiatives. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today as we mark the launch of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. Please visit our website at kystudentsuccess.org to learn more about upcoming opportunities to engage with your colleagues and the collaborative to accelerate progress on student success. I look forward to talking with you soon.